Hello, and welcome to the Accountability Coach podcast, where we discuss proven business success principles related to helping you make more money and work less so you can enjoy having your ideal business and ideal life. And Bachrach here. Today we have a special guest with us who is going to share her valuable insight about helping business owners hire, train, and retain high-value staff to help you take your business to your next level. Quality Assurance Manager at Coca-Cola turned entrepreneur, Denise Cagan of DCA Virtual Business Support is my guest today. She has owned one business or another for 20 plus years. Denise was running a virtual workforce before the pandemic forced companies to do so. Listen in to hear what she has to say about sustainability of staff in the hybrid and remote business models. Welcome, Denise. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Anne. Such a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's just get right into it. When hiring support team members, obviously, you always want to find the A players to be on your team, of course. In order for people to best find these A players, what exactly would you recommend as a game plan for success to be able to find those kind of people?
So I think it's important first to back up just a little bit and understand what's going on in the job market right now. One of my favorite resources is Pew Research. Okay, they have amazing data there, and some of their stats show that people are moving around. Everybody's heard about the Great Resignation. People are moving around, jumping job to job, and the top 5 reasons stated are pay being too low, no opportunity for advancement, they felt disrespected at work, childcare issues, and not enough flexibility with hours. So with those things in mind, the first place to start is really starting off on the right foot. Let the candidates know what to expect from you, your company, about your culture when you put the job ad out there. That is your first touch, and you want to make sure that they're aware. Like for my company, we've got some very specific statements in there talking about how we serve small businesses. So if somebody's from a corporate background and wants that feel, automatically they know this isn't going to be a good fit for them. So fit is very important, but making sure that you're communicating that, whether you offer flexible hours or whether you have a structured butt needs to be in the seat from these hours to these hours, make sure those are all communicated at the very beginning. So starting off on the right foot and that job ad is where I would start.
Okay, what else would you put in there to look, to say, hey, this defines my A players. So when you're putting in the job description, what specific things would help kind of weed out the people who weren't the A players, so to speak? Can you do that generically enough?
Oh, sure. So you want your criteria, and that should come from your job description. So you also have to have developed job descriptions, and you might need to re-look at these. We've just gone through 2 years of immense amount of change due to the pandemic. So you may want to re-look at your job description before you start putting your job ad out. Look at your criteria. Okay, with my company, we all work from home. So it's important that we have people that are familiar with work from home. That for us is actually not a weeding out criteria, it's a preference. Though there are certain other things that are weeding out criteria. Number of years of experience with certain platforms. If you're a designer, you want to make sure that people have design experience with, the Adobe Creative Suite. If you're an engineer, they may need CAD drawing experience, okay? So understanding what your criteria and what your basic minimums are, and really just not deviating from that. I think a lot of times small business owners, we get in a rut because we want to fill that position. We are desperate to put somebody in that position. It has been vacant way too long. So we make really poor choices that are against the criteria that we've set up. So I encourage, the small business owners, the hiring managers to just really sit tight and pay attention to your criteria. Understand in your criteria where there is flex and where there is not flex, and determine this not in the interview, but before you do the interview. And then you'll want some soft skill criteria. So you'll want your technical criteria. You'll want your soft skill criteria. I think every job description for the most part should have, excellent communication skills. And then you also, if you are a remote culture, you need to have technology requirements, meaning you need certain bandwidth for your internet or certain type of computer with CPU processing requirements. That's a little bit new in this field and with hiring, because there are areas that are rural and remote that the connectivity is bad, and it's unfortunate, but the candidate is not able to do the job because they just don't have the proper connectivity.
So let's talk about then, how would you best test these people? Let's say they need CAD skills or they need certain skills. Is there a way that you would recommend that people actually test their skills and abilities before they actually even come in for the interview?
Well, we don't test before. However, okay, so there's a couple of schools of thoughts. I follow enough groups on Facebook and LinkedIn to hear what the entrepreneurs and hiring managers are saying, as well as what the prospective candidates are saying. Prospective candidates I'm not going to build out this, and I hear this in the social media groups particularly, I'm not going to build out a strategy plan for you for an interview. That's paid work. You need to pay me for my time. As an employer, I completely agree with that. Most employers do not. They think that is a good test, and it is a good test of whether they can do the job. However, the complaint coming from the side of the employee is that you're asking me to do free work, and I'm just not going to have it. I think employers and hiring managers need to understand this. If you are asking them to do tests, there are some tests, like there's a program called eSkills, that you can set up criteria, which we have done for our administrative assistants. And we can say, okay, we want this level of learning on Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, calendaring, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we can select the criteria, and then we can send that test to them. It's not more than 30 minutes. I think that is reasonable. That is a test versus a skills assessment. And they're slightly different. I know people might, argue that and say, no, they're not really. They're the same. But we do a working interview. But before they do a working interview, we are actually doing a phone interview as well as a face-to-face Zoom interview. And in that phone interview, we're testing for the right culture, the right fit, ensuring that they're able to work the type of hours that we want them to. Even though we do have extraordinarily flexible schedules, we also have to meet the client demand. On that Zoom interview, we get a little bit more technical. We talk about their skills. We give them a lot of situational questions, and we don't accept hypotheticals. They have to answer it with what they did versus what they would do. And there's a big difference there. And then we go to a working interview. Our working interview, we pay our people, our candidates, for the time that they spend with us. We explain that up front. It is a 3-hour working interview. We actually explain that very early in the process in case they don't want to do that. They can weed themselves out early. It's a 3-hour working interview. You are paid for your time. You'll be screen sharing. Somebody will be watching you the whole time. You can ask questions, and we look at a lot of different things. It's not a pass-fail test. We look at things like how resourceful, are they? They didn't know this, but they went on Google and they figured it out. That could be a win. Again, it goes back to understanding what your criteria is and where you have flex in your criteria. So we actually created that, and we took a couple rounds. We have different working interviews for different positions in our company.
Do you do anything differently with a person who is going to be a virtual person versus a person who's going to be physically in your office, or somebody who might do both? Is there any difference in the interview process for that?
So I am currently not in a physical office, and I haven't been with my company, though I have been in the past. It goes back to the technology requirements. That is different. we do require them to create a screenshot. We have a very specific place where we test their speed, their internet speed. We do a screenshot of the computer requirements to make sure they match what our minimum requirements are. So that is different. I would say there's a little bit more difference when you get them in the door versus in the hiring process. It's important to understand why people work from home, and it's maybe a little bit surprising that it's not now because of the pandemic, whereas in early 2020, 64% of people were working from home because the office was closed. That is completely flipped. 61%, almost the same number, choose to work from home and not go into the office. And the reasons are mostly because it's their preference. The number who are afraid about COVID exposure has significantly decreased over time. So it's not, people are choosing to be at home. So understanding why they're there, first of all, is very important. Secondly, there are a few things that you need to do a little bit differently. Building that foundation of respect. I can assure you that communicating via email or text or Teams messages can be a miss. People read it and they interpret it how their brain interprets it, maybe not how you intended it. So making sure that you are intentionally doing touch points, that you are face to face, and that could be Zoom, that could be Teams, there's a plethora of other video platforms, but making sure that even though you're remote and it may be way more efficient to send an email or a Teams message, take that time, particularly if you need to correct them for something or guide them or coach them. Take that time to do it face to face. You can pick up on things in those visual cues, their body language, their expression, and you can understand when they're not understanding, and then try to explain it better. I don't mind telling you something 3 or 4 or 5 different ways if it helps you understand. It can be a little fatiguing at times sometimes, but the thing is I want to set my team up for success. And if I don't go that extra level, then it's not going to be successful. The other thing is, it sounds so simple, treat others as you want to be treated. And sometimes you just need to be vulnerable. I'm the business owner. Yes, I am. But there are times that, my team and we don't agree on things. So for instance, my team leaders, I have repeatedly told them, it's okay if I don't disagree with you. I don't want you to stop telling me those things, though, because there are times that we've come back to things and I said, I think I'm seeing what you're saying now, and let's go ahead and try that way. But it's important to have some ground rules for giving feedbacks and for handling disagreements. What is the safe space? Do you need a safe word? And it sounds a little elementary, and it sounds like maybe this shouldn't be in business. But I believe as you grow a team, particularly in a very small business like mine is, our leadership team is very close. Okay. And so they have a safe word. If they feel like I'm being my director self, which is my natural personality, they say the safe word and I'm like, okay, let's talk about this at another time. I've given them permission to tell me, hey, I think we've got some emotions going on here. Can we come back to this? So make sure that you have some ground rules, that you're a little bit vulnerable and very transparent. And then finally, I would say allow time for connections. I believe, and I've heard this from many business owners, it's like, I'm only paying for deliverables. Well, you have a team. You want them to interact. You want them to do work together. You need to allow time for connections. In the office, the traditional water cooler conversation, people were making friendships, they were having relationships, and now we're relegated to Zoom or other video tools. And so you need to allow time for a little bit of playfulness. Playfulness in the office. I'm not talking about ping pong tables. I'm just saying, start your meeting off with some icebreaker activities that help each other get to know each other. Be intentional about assigning people who wouldn't traditionally work together. We have a creative team and an admin team. So pairing up an administrative person with a creative person to work on a project is a great idea. They get to know a little bit about each other, about the other teams. They don't feel like they're segregated in their spaces. This is their lane only. And I believe it creates a stronger team.
Okay, sounds good. We talked a little bit on technology earlier. So I'm curious, are there technology recommendations that really help the staff be efficient and effective? And the other part of that question is, do companies expect the employees to have their own computer versus supplying them with a company computer that, let's say, has the proper CPU processing or proper way to set them up to give them bandwidth, et cetera?
Let me answer the computer question first. So I think it depends upon the size of the business, to be perfectly honest with you, okay? If you're talking about Bank of America, yes, they provide computers with all the exact specs and all the technology. If you're talking about a small business, and in my mind, a small business is not the SBA definition of a small business. I'm talking 1 million and under. If you're talking about a business that size, it is not uncommon for BYOD, bring your own device. With my company, we do a little bit of a hybrid of what you just mentioned, okay? So it is bring your own device. However, I provide the security. So all the cybersecurity is provided by me. Why? I want to make sure everybody's computers are protected. I want to make sure my client's information is protected. That's it, bottom line. With the exception of a few tools that are very specific, most of the time we provide the technology. And so we have systems like Clockify for keeping track of time. We use Asana. We use Microsoft Office, and everybody has access to that, the OneDrives and the SharePoints, Teams, etc. All of those are paid for through the company. And, bigger companies, I think, would provide other types of software as well. There are some that, with a smaller company as mine, might be a little bit out of reach, or we don't provide the subscription, but we're willing to reimburse. So it could be done, a combination of ways. Then as far as tools to set them up for success, I think, again, we like the Microsoft environment. Google is just as robust. The Google Professional Suite, it has all the tools they need. You have email, you have calendaring, you have your productivity tools that are Word, Excel, or the equivalent of it in Google, the PowerPoint. You have storage spaces such as Google Drive, OneDrive, SharePoint. You have meeting capabilities. You have messaging capabilities. So investing in a system like that, either the Microsoft Office 365 environment or Google Suite, the professional version, is very important for setting your team up for success. And then some other type of productivity tools. In each of those platforms do have some types of tools. However, my preference is an outside one for productivity and project management and task management. It may not be project management, but it overarchingly is. So Asana. Asana is our tool of choice for the project management and task management. We've also used ClickUp and a few others. I think Nifty was the other one, Monday on occasion. But I think for the small business owners, that is a great way to stay on top of things, set your team up for success. You can also integrate all those into your hiring process. We have, every time we bring on a new team member, there's probably 20 to 25 tasks that need to happen. We literally have that in an Asana project. We replicate it and assign it out to the people they need to go to, and everything gets done the way it's supposed to. So it makes it's such a great repeatable process tool.
Now, as it relates to accountability, you talked about, I think, Clockify as kind of a way, I guess, to clock in and clock out. I'm assuming that's what that's for.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other types of accountability softwares that, help the business owner know, hey, they're really working on my projects while they're at home, for example?
There are some video tools. I do not know the names of them, but I know if you hire a contractor off of Upwork, they use those video tools where they actually screen capture. I personally find that a little bit invasive. I would not use that. I feel like I need to create the level of trust within the team that they are doing these things, but we do monitor Clockify to see what they are working on. The other thing is Asana. Everything has due dates, and while we have extraordinarily flexible schedules, turning in quality work and on time is our biggest criteria. And we can absolutely tell that from Asana if things are being turned in on time. And of course, the quality of the work, it gets turned into our team leaders. So I would say using your existing tools, like your project management tools, to manage that accountability and making sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, I think is the best way.
Okay, let's say we've hired our A player or A players. What do you recommend as the best way to go about training them? So I think you talked a little bit about, processes and things like that. So do you have them follow existing processes? Do you have them test them? Do you have them create them? How do you do that?
So a combination of those things. So we have a lot of existing processes, and we are always creating more. Generating standard operating procedures is not a one and done task. They are always needing to be looked at, revised, updated because technology changes. And if you're reliant on technology in any way, your procedures need to be reviewed at least every 6 months. With that said, when we bring on a new team member, as I mentioned, starting out on the right foot, we have started doing what we call a visual, oh gosh, what do we call it? The name is terrible. It probably needs to be renamed something. It's a calendar of sorts, and basically it shows the new team member, what they're going to be doing for the next 30 days. It's not everything that they will be doing because there are some client needs that can't be predicted, but it's all of their new hire orientation steps are on there. So in that new hire orientation, there's an opportunity to train them on all of the systems we use. We train them on Clockify. We train them on Asana. We train them to show them how to do their payroll. Then we have them meet the sister team leader. And then we have them meet the other people on our core team if they have not met them. So we've got all of these things in step. And then what we will also do on that 30-day calendar is that if we know they're going to be working with specific clients, we'll schedule in days of side-by-side training. So we do primarily on-the-job training with our clients. Each of our clients has, there's some consistent things across the board, but each of our clients has different needs that's relative to their account. So we find it most useful to take the standard procedures we have, say for instance, for scheduling appointments. Take that standardized procedure, go through it with the team member, and then work side by side, say, this is how it applies to this client. So we document all of our training, particularly when they're new. We actually document it ongoing. We have a quarterly trainer tracker. We have scheduled trainings at each of the monthly meetings each team has. So we have other touch points where we provide a lot of other training. But there is a way, if you know, I think my positions are probably a little bit more fluid. However, when I worked at a corporate job, we had specific training that was done. So we would bring in a lab tech, and when that lab tech was brought in, we would train them on machine A, machine B, machine C, and if that covered what they needed, then we would do a general orientation of the production process, where things are, so they understood the whole production process. And then there might be some peripheral trainings as well, relating to productivity or how the changeover process works. So in some settings, you can absolutely create a training plan that is very structured in step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. In some instances, you have your supporting procedures and then show how they relate to the specific circumstance, which is what we do.
Let's say that one of the clients has different software that your team isn't familiar with. How do you best acclimate them to, learn that software that the client uses or wants them to use?
First of all, if it's an incoming client, we may not take that account. If it's too far out of our wheelhouse, we probably just would not take that. However, there are some, a recent example, as a matter of fact, is we were asked about HoneyBook. HoneyBook is somewhat a mashup of Zoho and Asana to some degree, with some invoicing capabilities in there. So we felt comfortable with that one. what we would do is we would get training for our team member. So if it's new to us, of course, we wouldn't necessarily know about it. What we would do is we would figure out where the training is existing and then provide that to the team member. A lot of times, systems like HoneyBook, they have a very robust help section. So that's the first place we would start, is going through that. And then my team leaders stay side by side when anything new is coming up in an account, just to make sure that they're understanding what's being asked from the client and to make sure that those skills transfer to the team member. And then we also subscribe to something called Coursera, which is, I guess for all intents and purposes, it could be likened to the LinkedIn Learning area as well. So we'll look in Coursera to see if there are any courses that we could provide to our team members for it. So we want to be prepared. It's just the training may come from a variety of different spaces. And if in some cases the clients are very comfortable, sharing that information with us.
And would they pay for that person to be trained, or who pays for that? Anybody?
The team member is 100% paid for the time. The team leader is 100% paid for the time. Whether the client pays for it or not is a little bit situational. So if we are taking on a client and say that, yes, we can handle this, you're not going to be charged for the time. If we have an existing client that says, hey, we just invested in this, then usually it's a partnership. Usually they pay for about half of the amount of the training time. And if they have more complex processes, we work with them, and basically we want it to be a partnership. We want to be able to provide the service that they need. However, sometimes, they provide us with a tool that we're not familiar with. And if we have an existing relationship and agreement, then we just talk about what the partnership is and where it makes sense to. Generally speaking, the team leader, they would not need to pay for their time, but the team member, they would.
Any other thoughts about either recruiting, training, retaining employees?
I think, yes, one last one, and that is that, we talked a lot about relationship and the reasons why people were leaving, and the feeling of people being disrespected. I think that the business owners and hiring managers should not take that for granted. I know for a fact the way I communicate is very direct, and that doesn't sit well with people. And I've had to work on that. And I've had to be very vulnerable about that. I've had to be willing to look at things and go, ooh, that didn't sound great. I'm really sorry. And I've had to apologize to people. Yes, I'm the president of the company, but guess what? I can be a jerk sometimes. I don't want to be a jerk. It's just my communication style is very direct. And for some people, that doesn't work. So be very open to feedback and opportunities to change in that area. We have a new generation of workers coming in, and they tend to be more sensitive to that. So not only are we dealing with, lots of external factors like the Great Resignation, inflation, and economy, we have a new generation coming up where their values are very different. They want to be heard and they want to be respected.
I appreciate you sharing your valuable time with us today.
And thank you so much for having me as a guest.
If you'd like to get more information about Denise and her organization, go to dcavirtual.com. That's dcavirtual.com. And obviously the DC stands for Denise Cagan. So dcavirtual.com, and you can learn more about her services and her organization if you are looking for assistance to help you in your firm. Well, my hope for our time together with Denise is that you got value in an idea or two that will help you be even more successful professionally and personally. Feel free to share my podcast with others, as it can be found on most podcast platforms and in most English-speaking countries, and of course at accountabilitycoach.com. And if you'd like to get a short daily fix from me, subscribe to the Accountability Minute, which can be found again on most podcast platforms and in most English-speaking countries. And remember to subscribe to my proven business success resources and tips blog by going to accountabilitycoach.com/blog. And always aim for what you want each and every day. Until next time, Make it a great day, today and every day. I appreciate you listening.